Hi, my name is Josh Van Harn. I'm a solutions engineer at RapDev, and this is an introductory demo of ServiceNow's DevOps module. The DevOps module on ServiceNow is designed to support in-house application development and things like GitOps, automated code deployment or infrastructure as code initiatives, by connecting to the pipelines and the other applications and tools that are supporting that on the ServiceNow platform in a way that allows you to use that to do policy-driven evaluations of deployment requests. In this demo, we'll briefly do an overview. I'll simulate being a developer. I have some work here. I need to add and remove some comments. So I'll go to my code repo. In that repo, update the file in question. In this case, I'll remove the comment. I'll commit, and I'll make sure I associate it to the work item, which is the remove the comment. There we go. And I commit this. On ADO in the background, there's a pipeline that will trigger based on the fact that I committed this. Obviously, depending on how you've done internal application development, this could be based on merge requests. This could be based on a time schedule, so however your development cycle is run, whatever your principles are that you've implemented. The essence is at some point, a pipeline will start triggering and wants to build an artifact. So in this case, we are running through a simple build process. We're doing the actual build and doing validations and testing against it. And at the end of that testing, we will go into a deploy state. So switching to ServiceNow, we're collecting that data on every step, anything that happens, irrespective of whether it's ADO or Jenkins or other pipeline tools, whether it's GitOps or again, ADO for where your code repos live, or a combination of those. The data is collected. ServiceNow normalizes that and waits for the actual deployment request from a pipeline, collects that data into a change record, and then allows us to evaluate that through a policy. So as soon as this pipeline is ready, you see that it's almost ready to deploy. I'm just going to pull up our chat ops in the background of this to see that we are going through a process with verbosity. So we're at 123. So we're just waiting for the last pop-up, but you can kind of see what's coming. So we expect that at part of the deployment requests, ServiceNow will be used to create a change request. And we're going through some policy-driven approval. And hopefully we'll see that this is going to be auto-approved. But you just saw it pop up already. So there's 607 is now created. So when we click into that change, you can see that there's data collected already as part of that initial deployment request. So we see some default values. Anything you see here configurable as part of the DevOps module implementation, you pick the information or data that's relevant to your organization based on how you run your audit or your change management processes. That includes the detailed fields around test planning and justification, either coming from the pipeline, from the story, or something that you pre-populate with a default value and maybe some links or references to collaboration pages or spaces. The most important part that I want to call out here is based on that single update, that single commit I did as a developer. We can see that that commit has been pulled in. You see, because I had the right hygiene I associated with the work item, you can see that the work item is being pulled in. We can see from the pipeline that test summaries have been done. So we see here that certain tests, 6 tests have been executed with a passing grade of 100%. We also see that we have a link to the artifact that was built. So this is the brand new artifact based on the update. So all the information relevant for instance, for auditing or understanding end-to-end how a thing is run is already collected in this change. And we can see here too, that there is a change policy that's being applied as part of that evaluation. So in this case, we see that the change policy was the standard DevOps change policy. We see that the decision was an auto approval and the action is auto approve. In this case, that means that we can look at the approval tab here, that the system itself has automatically approved this, which we can also check again against our verbosity here in the chat ops, where we see that it was auto approved by that system user. So the main element here, right, when we look at the policy-driven evaluation, is that we are collecting data and using that data to evaluate whether or not there is a risk embedded in this or that we are accepting the level of risk that the deployment has. Let's pop over to that policy that was being used. So we see here the DevOps default change policy. We see 3 potential outcomes, 3 decision points. We see an auto reject, in this case, if code security isn't up to spec. We see an auto approval, the one we just saw happen based on a set of conditions. And we see a manual approval in this case if the other two aren't applied. This default action, which is basically either a CAB approval or some other organizational reference, some eyes on this change to decide whether or not deployment is acceptable. On the back of this, to come to these decisions, we have policy inputs. And these choices could be anything in your organization that is relevant to your evaluation of risk, to your evaluation of the quality of the proposed deployment. And we can use that, wrap that into a decision. When we zoom in on the auto approval that we just went through, we can see there's a whole set of validations that. So you can see whether he's using these policies or these conditions for execution, you can reduce risk to deployment to production because you're looking at standardized, normalized values and organizational principles, and you're not dependent on an individual providing information. And on top of that, you see you can accelerate in areas where the information you've provided sufficiently tells you that the risk of the deployment is within the acceptable range. It means you can trust the deployments within the context of the test framework. So by using that data, you're reducing risk by normalizing it, but you're also allowing the organization to deploy faster, right, within that reduced risk level. So the ability for a team to do a commit like you just saw and within a few minutes actually have a production deployment that is validated and pushed to production are the core values of the DevOps module.